Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Lydia and I make faith-based content now on YouTube. If you're new, welcome. I hope this video blesses you. And if you've been with me for a minute or so, welcome back. Hope you're having an amazing week. And yeah, so last week we started speaking about seasons. Because in life, just like naturally, God outworks our purpose and our life assignment through seasons. And it is important for us to understand what season we're in, what are the rules of engagement in those seasons so that we leverage them and do not fall victim or extend a season unnecessarily. We cannot, spiritually speaking, fast track a season that God has ordained for us, but we can delay it by not stewarding it well. And today I want to talk about one of those seasons, which is our winter seasons. And it's important for us to understand what are the characteristics of winter or wilderness seasons? What is the purpose of it? And also how to actually walk it out. Because we can either unknowingly, by not wisely stewarding it, extend it longer than what God intended it for us. And what I also want to stress is that it is not God's punishment. Sometimes people make it seem like if you're going through a wilderness, it's because God is punishing you, you're out of alignment with God or something. But let's read in Hosea. He said, "Therefore, I am now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her." It is God who is saying, I'm going to lead you into the wilderness. Jesus, after his baptism, God affirming him as his son and that he's pleased with him. It says that the Spirit of the Lord led him into the wilderness. You will find, personally, that's what I found. Every time God gives me a promise or he tells me something about the next season he's leading me into, I immediately find myself in a wilderness season. And previously I used to be like, God, what's going on? Like, you told me this and that. And now I'm finding myself in a season that looks the complete opposite of what you've told me. But there's a reason and a purpose for us going through the wilderness. Characteristics of winter. From a natural perspective, the days are shorter. There's a lot of discomfort. We are cold. There's limited activity, and it's not a time to plant. When we look at it from a spiritual perspective, it's no different. It seems like I want to say it feels like our dreams are dying. It's not necessarily true, but it feels like God is distant. His voice is not as clear as it was in the previous seasons. It seems like we start to begin less and less more fit for what he said we were called to do. That's when we start to see clearly just how inadequate we are. But there's a purpose to it because God uses the winter season, the wilderness season, not as a time to shelve us until he's ready to use us. As sometimes people say, God wastes no season. God is always intentional about everything. The winter is a time for us to be matured, to be trained, and to be developed, and to be increased in our capacity. Because how can we be trusted to handle glory when we've never handled shame, disappointment, and pain? How can we be trusted to feed thousands when we've never learned to feed and trust them for one, yourself? How can we be trusted to lead when we've never been led or handled power? God wastes no season. It is a time for us to be matured. The purpose of winter is to shed off the old and to make room for the new. Jesus said that it is unwise to pour new wine into old wineskins. So spiritually speaking, old wineskins is our old way of thinking, our old way of being, our old way of doing. Because our current level of thinking, our current level of being, our current level of faith is not going to work in the next that God is calling us to. Because God says that our faith is supposed to grow from glory to glory. We're supposed to mature in our character from glory to glory because he continuously takes us to the next level. But that next level will require a new level of our thinking, of our doing, and of our being. Winter is a time for us to die to ourselves, to mature, and to develop. Die to the ways of immaturity. If you used to easily be offended in this season, that won't work when you're the leader. If you used to easily lose your temper, that attitude, that sense of being is not going to work in what God is wanting to entrust you with. And also, it's a time to develop our spiritual muscles, because the next that God has for you will have a greater weight, and you need to be able to carry a greater weight in your character and in your spirit. So God prepares you. And winter is also a time of downtime, in a sense, because that's a time for us to evaluate where we are and the lessons that God has taken us in this current or previous seasons, so that we can also evaluate, prepare, and plan for the next that He's calling us. It is also a time for us to let go of our idea of what we think our calling is, or how we think that God is going to actually outwork our calling. It's also a time that God begins in the secret place, in a alone time, because one of the characteristics of winter season is that you find yourself a lot of the times alone, in isolation, because God wants to whisper your uniqueness, your calling, because we can all be called to minister, we can all be called into business, we can all be called into music, but there's a uniqueness to each of our call. And it's in the winter, in the secret place, that God refines all those little intricacies for you. How then do we walk out our winter season with wisdom? Firstly, I've already alluded to this. Release your idea of how you think God is going to promote you, He's going to vindicate you, or release you into your life assignment. Resist the urge to run ahead of God, because that will only lead to trouble. Because that's how we find ourselves birthing Ishmaels, which is basically doing something that God has called us to do in a way that He's not ordained us to do it, or out of timing. God will not share His glory with us. That is why He's going to do what He wants to do for us, what He's promised, His way. Because it needs to be evident that it was Him, not us. So resist going ahead of God. Resist coming up with ideas of how you think He should do it. Which also goes in line with in that season, because you feel like your dream is dying. You feel disappointed. It's painful because we are dying, essentially. Remain unoffended by God. Choose to, whatever the hurt, whatever the pains, whatever process that He's taking you through, submit to His process and remain unoffended by Him, and remain unoffended by others, because He will use, or rather allow, people in those seasons to get away with things that normally He would not allow them to go, because He's growing your maturity. He's stretching you spiritually. He's stretching your heart to be able to handle certain things. So choose to remain unoffended by Him and His process, and choose to remain unoffended by others, because they don't know what they're doing. And your season and that season is not the same. So don't compare yourself with what God is doing in someone else's life with what He's doing because they may have already gone through that wilderness season. And also your calling may require a deeper level of refinement than they, because your assignment may impact more people than them. So we cannot allow ourselves to compare our journey with other people. Remain unoffended and commit and be determined to finish your course and finish the process that God is taking you through. Let's read in Hebrews. It says, patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that He has promised. And in that season, it's also important to guard against complaining. Because when we are finding ourselves complaining, that's when we find ourselves speaking words that will actually cancel what God has been trying to do. Canceling. And actually, we're basically saying, God, I don't like what you're doing, and I think I could do better. That is essentially the nut and bolt of complaining about what our lives is. We're saying, God, I don't like what you're doing with my life, and I can do a better job. And complaining was the one sin that actually prevented Israel from entering the promised land. So don't find yourself in blocking your promotion, blocking or extending your wilderness season by complaining. Guard against complaining. Trust that your promise, your promotion, your vindication will come. In Psalms, it says, this I know, the favor that brings promotion and power doesn't come from anywhere on earth. For no one exalts a person but God, the true judge of all. He alone determines where favor rests. He anoints one for greatness and brings down another to his knees. So trust that if it's vindication that is you're waiting for, if it's promotion that you're waiting for, if it's a promise that has been given for, it's coming in God's timing. And when God does it, it will be clear that it is God and not you. And 6 is keep Jesus as the main focus of your heart. The main focus in all of this is for us to be made into his likeness. God doesn't give us promises. God doesn't take us through seasons of life just for the sake of it. In everything that he does, yes, it's for us to be fruitful for his kingdom. Yes, it's for us to fulfill the assignment and purpose for which he has called us. But the greatest and most important thing is for us to be forged into the image of his son. We read in Ephesians, in him we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. Everything he does is for us to conform to his likeness. And last is that remember, no one can take away God's plan for your life. What God has ordained for you, it's yours. God is a covenant-keeping God. So it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what anyone else does. It doesn't matter who favors you or doesn't favor you. It doesn't matter what you're experiencing right now. What has been ordained for you is yours. In Corinthians, Paul says, therefore we do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what we see, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Yes, you may be going through winter. It's not nice, it's not uncomfortable, it's a process of death, so it's not easy, but it far outweighs the promise that God has for you if you outlast your winter. And I leave you with this: avoid shortcuts. Don't be tempted to shorten your season. You cannot shorten a season that has been ordained by God. Yours is to go through the process, submit to his way, and allow him to outwork in you what that season needs to be outworked in you. And remember that he is faithful, he is faithful, he is faithful. That which he has promised you, he will fulfill. He is not punishing you. He is merely maturing you, developing you, and increasing your capacity for the promise that he has for you. That's it for today. Love you guys. Have an amazing one. Stay true, stay diligent, and please do invite others on this journey that we're on. Have an amazing one. Bye.